Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something I bet you use every day. Your car's infotainment system.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you've had those moments where you're like trying to juggle the music and navigation and
All the time.
yeah, maybe even texting while driving.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to handle.
Yeah.
Well, you sent over this research paper that really digs into how different types of displays,
Okay.
like visual, auditory, or a mix of the two,
Right.
affect driver performance and safety.
Interesting.
And honestly, some of the findings were really surprising to me.
I bet. So what were they looking at specifically?
So they used a driving simulator with a group of young drivers
Okay.
to test out 6 different gesture-based systems,
Okay.
and they were trying to figure out which combination of displays and controls was safest
Gotcha.
and led to the most efficient driving experience.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so one of the things that the paper really emphasizes is the potential danger
Yeah.
of touchscreens in vehicles.
I mean, that's got to be distracting, right?
Totally. They're pulling our attention away from the road.
Yeah.
But the study actually goes deeper and looks at the science behind that distraction.
Oh, wow. So like how our brains are actually processing all this?
Exactly. And it all comes down to this thing called multiple resource theory,
Multiple resource theory.
or MRT.
MRT. Okay.
And it's basically this idea that we have limited mental resources
Okay.
for processing information.
Right.
So when we're driving, we're already using a lot of visual and spatial resources.
Right.
And then you add a touch screen on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like trying to juggle
Uh-huh.
while riding a unicycle.
Yeah, something's got to give.
Exactly. Something's got to give.
So what did they find? Like what kind of results did they get from the study?
So one of the most surprising results was that systems with auditory-only displays
Okay.
actually led to the safest driving performance.
Really?
Yeah.
So the ones that just use sound.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
That is kind of surprising.
Yeah. Those drivers had fewer lane departures,
Okay.
and they were better at maintaining a consistent following distance.
So they were just more like steady and focused?
Yeah.
It seems counterintuitive though, right? Like you think you need to see things
Right now.
to be able to react.
Right.
But I guess if you think about it, if you're getting information through sound,
Uh-huh.
your eyes are free to stay on the road.
Yeah. And they're not darting back and forth between the road and the screen.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. And the study's data actually backs this up.
Oh, wow.
Drivers using those auditory-only displays had significantly smaller deviations in their lane position, so they were staying in their lane more consistently.
Wow. That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
So it seems like those auditory cues are really helping to improve safety.
Yeah. It highlights this idea of designing systems
Yeah.
that work with our natural cognitive processes.
I see.
Not against them.
So are you saying that like we're kind of naturally better at processing audio information while we're driving?
It seems like it. It seems like it might be less of a cognitive load to process sound than to process visual information.
Okay, but I'm guessing there has to be some kind of trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always a trade-off.
Yeah, there's got to be a trade-off somewhere.
So what is it?
Well, while auditory displays promoted safer driving,
Yeah.
visual displays actually did lead to faster menu selection times.
Okay, but wasn't the accuracy like similar?
Yeah. The accuracy of those selections stayed high
Okay.
across all the different systems.
So it's like the visual was faster,
Uh-huh.
but they were both just as accurate.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's almost like choosing between speed and safety.
Right. Like, do you want to be fast or do you want to be safe?
Yeah. And I think for me, I'd rather be a few seconds slower
Yeah.
if it means keeping my eyes on the road.
Definitely. Yeah, I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah.
So what else did they look at in the study?
Well, they also meticulously tracked the driver's eye movements.
Okay, so like how long they were looking away from the road.
Yeah. And no surprise here.
What'd they find?
Systems with visual displays resulted in way more off-road glances.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you're looking at a screen, you're going to look away from the road.
And even those quick little glances
Yeah.
can delay our reaction time
Right.
to hazards.
Yeah. Because you're not
Yeah.
seeing what's happening in
Yeah.
front of you.
Right, and the numbers were pretty shocking.
Okay, how shocking are we talking?
Participants using visual-only displays had an average of 25 short glances
25.
away from the road,
Oh my gosh.
compared to less than 1
Less than 1.
for those using auditory-only displays.
Yeah, that's a huge difference.
That's a huge difference.
That's really eye-opening.
Yeah.
Literally.
And it really highlights that cumulative effect of those seemingly minor distractions.
It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Right.
Each one on its own might not be a big deal.
Yeah.
But when you add them all up, it can be a real problem.
Yeah. So speaking of those glances,
Okay.
the study also looked at how different displays affected overall performance and perceived workload.
Interesting. So not just how well they were driving, but how they felt?
Right, like their subjective experience.
Ah.
And there was another interesting finding.
Okay.
Drivers consistently reported feeling less stressed and more in control
Okay.
when they were using auditory displays.
So like they felt less overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that lower perceived workload spanned across like mental, physical, and temporal measures.
Wow. So it was across the board.
Yeah. They also felt more successful and less frustrated overall.
So not only were they driving more safely,
Yeah.
but they were also like enjoying the experience more.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
So it seems like they actually preferred the system that might be a tad slower.
Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want to feel less stressed while driving?
Right. That seems counterintuitive, though. Like, why would you prefer something that's slower?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because those auditory cues offer a sense of control.
Yeah.
And it maybe reduces decision fatigue
Okay.
because you don't have to keep looking away from the road.
Right.
So you might feel less overwhelmed
Yeah.
and more able to anticipate what's coming next.
Yeah. So it's almost like those anxieties we get about using technology while we're driving are lessened
Yeah.
when we can rely on our hearing.
It's like our brain is freed up to focus on the driving
Yeah.
and not on like trying to figure out the interface.
Exactly. And so it all comes down to how our brains process information
Yeah.
and manage that cognitive load.
Right, because we only have so much bandwidth.
Exactly. So we've talked about auditory versus visual.
Right.
But what about how we actually interact with these systems?
Okay, yeah, like the physical controls and stuff.
Yeah, so interestingly, drivers preferred systems with a vertical control orientation.
Vertical.
Yeah, so like up and down.
Okay.
Even though there wasn't a huge difference in performance.
So it wasn't like they were actually better at using it.
Right, but they found it more intuitive
Interesting.
and easier to map to the visual display.
Okay, so like they could just kind of picture it better in their minds.
Yeah, so think about it this way. Direct manipulation.
Okay.
Like moving your hand up
Uh-huh.
to select something higher on the screen
Okay.
feels more natural
Yeah.
than that indirect approach of a mouse metaphor, where you might move your hand forward
Forward.
to like select something.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's about making that interaction feel like an extension
Uh-huh.
of our natural movements
Right.
rather than something that requires extra mental effort.
I see. So it's like making the technology work with our brains
Yeah,
instead of the other way around.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that subtle difference in design can have a big impact on how we experience and interact with technology.
It's all about those little details
Yeah,
that make a big difference.
exactly.
This is so cool.
Yeah, it really highlights how even small design choices can have a ripple effect on our driving experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious, thinking about the bigger picture here, what does all of this mean for everyday drivers like you and me?
Well, I think this research makes a pretty compelling case for using auditory displays
Okay.
as a key way to make driving safer and less distracting.
And less distracting.
Yeah, because if we can keep our eyes on the road,
Right.
that's the best way to prevent accidents.
Yeah. And it seems like those benefits of keeping our eyes glued to the road really do outweigh any minor trade-offs in terms of speed.
Right, because like we were saying, a few seconds slower
Yeah,
is worth it if it means you're not going to get into an accident.
exactly. And, it's making me reconsider how I use my own car system.
Oh, yeah. In what way?
I'm realizing that I rely a lot on the visual display, and maybe I could be using more auditory cues.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are probably in the same boat.
Yeah, and it's all about making those conscious choices behind the wheel, right?
Yeah.
And understanding how those choices affect not only our safety,
Right.
but also our overall driving experience.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
driving should be enjoyable.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be stressful.
Definitely.
So I think this research is really valuable because it helps us to be more mindful
Yeah.
of how we're interacting with our cars.
Yeah. That's a great point. The next time I'm in the driver's seat,
Yeah.
I'm going to be way more mindful
Yeah.
of how I can prioritize safety
Right.
and minimize those distractions.
For sure.
Maybe incorporating more auditory cues could be a good first step.
Absolutely. And as technology continues to evolve,
Yeah.
I think it's exciting to imagine
Yeah.
how our cars of the future will blend visual and auditory feedback.
Yeah. It sounds super futuristic,
It does.
but you're right. It's probably closer than we think.
I think so.
Imagine a car that can adapt
Yeah.
to your individual needs and preferences and provide the right type of feedback.
Right. At the right time.
At the right time.
All while making safety the top priority.
That's the goal.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, it would be really cool.
So, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexity of these systems.
Yeah, it's a lot more to it than you might think.
I know. We've just scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
There's a whole world of multimodal interfaces in vehicles just waiting to be explored.
And I think it's a really important area of research.
Yeah.
Because it has the potential to make a real difference in people's lives.
Yeah, and the implications go way beyond just cars, too.
Oh,
right?
totally.
Think about, planes, trains, even spaceships.
Anywhere where you have human operators interacting with complex systems.
These findings could make a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about understanding the human brain and how we process information and then using that knowledge to design systems that are safer, more efficient, and ultimately more enjoyable to use. Yeah, it's mind-blowing to think about the potential.
It is.
I know I'll be paying much closer attention
to
how I interact with my car system from now on.
I think we all should.
Yeah.
Something we can all benefit from.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
Yeah, it has.
It's given me so much to think about.
I'm glad.
But before we wrap things up,
I
want to remind everyone that we've included a link to the full research paper in the show notes.
Definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to delve deeper into this topic and explore the science behind driver behavior and interface design.
It's really fascinating stuff.
It is.
You won't regret reading it.
So until next time.
Yes.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
Stay informed.
Yeah.
And most importantly, stay safe on the road.
Stay safe.
We'll see you on our next deep dive. This is so cool. It really highlights how even small design choices can impact our driving.
Yeah.
But thinking about the bigger picture here, what does all this mean for everyday drivers like you and me?
Well, I think this research makes a pretty compelling case.
Yeah.
For auditory displays as a key part of creating safer driving experiences that are less distracting.
And less distracting.
Yeah, because if we can keep our eyes on the road, that's the best way to prevent accidents.
Yeah, it seems like those benefits of just keeping our eyes glued to the road really outweigh any minor trade-offs in terms of speed.
Right, because a few seconds slower is worth it if it means you're not going to get into an accident.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's making me reconsider how I use my own car system.
Oh, yeah? In what way?
I'm realizing that I rely so much on the visual display. And I think maybe I could be using more auditory cues.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are probably in the same boat.
Yeah, it's all about making conscious choices behind the wheel.
Yeah, for sure.
And understanding how those choices affect not only our safety, but our overall driving experience.
Exactly. Driving should be enjoyable.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be stressful.
Yeah.
So I think this research is really valuable because it helps us be more mindful of how we're interacting with our cars.
Yeah, that's a great point. Next time I get in the driver's seat, I'm going to be way more mindful of how I can prioritize safety and minimize those distractions.
Sure.
Maybe incorporating more auditory cues could be a good first step.
Absolutely. And as technology continues to evolve, I think it's exciting to imagine how our cars of the future will blend visual and auditory feedback.
It sounds super futuristic, but you're right. It's probably closer than we think.
I think so, yeah.
Imagine a car that can adapt to your individual needs, preferences, and provide the right type of feedback at the right time.
At the right time.
All while making safety the top priority.
That's the goal.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be really cool.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexity of these systems.
It's a lot more to it than you might think.
We've just scratched the surface.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There's a whole world of multimodal interfaces in vehicles just waiting to be explored.
Yeah, and it's a really important area of research.
Yeah.
Because it has the potential to make a real difference in people's lives.
And the implications go way beyond just cars, right?
Totally. Think about planes, trains, even spaceships.
Yeah.
Anywhere where you have human operators.
Right.
Interacting with complex systems.
These findings could have a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all boils down to understanding the human brain.
Yeah.
How we process information.
Right.
And then using that knowledge to design systems that are safer, more efficient, and ultimately more enjoyable to use.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing to think about the potential.
It is. Yeah.
I know I'll be paying much closer attention to how I interact with my car system.
Yeah, me too.
From now on.
I think we all should.
Yeah, it's something we can all benefit from.
Absolutely.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has, yeah.
It's given me so much to think about.
Good. Yeah, I'm good.
But before we wrap things up,
okay.
I want to remind everyone we've included a link to the full research paper.
Yes, definitely check it out.
In the show notes, it's a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to delve deeper into this topic and explore the science behind driver behavior and interface design.
It's really fascinating stuff.
It is.
You won't regret reading it.
So until next time, stay curious.
Stay curious.
Stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe on the road.
Stay safe.
We'll see you on our next deep dive.
See ya.
You know, it's amazing to consider how this research could shape how we interact with vehicles in the future.
Yeah, like you were saying, maybe one of our listeners will be inspired to contribute to this field.
Right.
And help shape the future of transportation technology.
And speaking of sparking innovation, for those of you who want to explore this topic even further, we've included a link to the full research paper in our show notes.
Yeah, it's packed with insights.
Yeah, it's a fascinating read.
And data that we couldn't cover in this deep dive.
Yeah, we just scratched the surface.
So if you're curious to learn more, I highly recommend checking it out.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of in-vehicle infotainment systems.
Yeah, this has been a really interesting conversation.
It has. It's given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
And until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe on the road.
Stay safe.
We'll see you on our next deep dive.
See you then.